There it is. We are recording tonight. All right. So sorry for all of you YouTube friends. We were just talking about the start here of our candidate information session. My name is Dannika Rynes, and I am the communications manager here at Columbia Association. And somehow, even this far after COVID, I continue to forget to start recording at the top of the presentation. So here we are. But you didn't miss much. We were just going over housekeeping notes. All right, we are going to post this on our YouTube page for anyone who couldn't make it this evening. We are holding this on Zoom webinar. And so if you aren't familiar with that, that means that you will be off camera and on mute for the duration of the session. Hopefully that is a welcome thing. You can grab a glass of whatever you would like. Hopefully you're in some comfy clothes, taking in this information after work. So please kick back in your post-work gear and just take this information in. We will have some time for some Q&A. What I would ask is that you actually use the Q&A function. So if you're not familiar with that, you can find that in the little menu options, I should call them. There is a chat option, but I'm going to ask that you use the Q&A. And those are two little speech bubbles next to each other. And the reason for that is it allows us to track a little better what questions we've gotten to, which ones we have not gotten to over the course of this conversation. Additionally, with the Q&A, we will be looking at as many questions as possible, trying to go through as many as possible. We ask that you keep them on topic for tonight's discussion around running for the board of directors here at CA or your village board. There will be some general CA information if you do have some clarifying questions around that. But, we would just ask that you keep them on topic. And what we will do as well is look at all of the different questions submitted. And if there are some around the same topic or really are asking the same, version of two different versions of the same question, we may combine those. You, of course, can follow up with us if you feel like your question wasn't answered tonight, and we will make sure you have that information at the end of the session. You can also, of course, reach out to your respective village. So I'm just going to take a moment to introduce who we have with us here. We have CA President and CEO Shawn MacInnes. We have Senior Vice President and CFO of CA, Susan Krabbe. We have our current board chair, Bill Santos, who's experiencing a little bit of camera problems. We promise he is a real person. And Hickory Ridge manager, Laura Mayton, here with us tonight to present some of this information. Here are all of those folks in writing in black and white, but I am going to turn it over to Shawn just for a few words of introduction. Shawn?
Thanks, Danica. I just want to welcome everybody that's attending on the webinar. And, I think you're going to hear some great information tonight about Columbia Association and the Columbia Villages and kind of how we operate, which I think is great. Susan is going to give you some great information as well as Danica, and then Bill from the board level, as well as Laura from the village board level. So, one thing that's really great about Columbia is that, we're a city. It's over 100,000 people. I think it's the 10 villages that make it feel like that nice, comfortable, small town feel. And Laura can go into what the participating in the villages is like. But being on the CA board is impactful. They set the direction for Columbia Association, and that is important moving forward. So they have a great role to play. I think it's a really interesting role to take a long-term look at, Columbia now and what it needs to be in the future and participate in that. So those of you that are interested, I really hope that you choose to participate and get involved. And I think hopefully after you hear this, that'll maybe motivate you. So, and my office is always open for questions, and I think you hear that, but we really do like to hear from you all. So any opportunity to provide that info, we love to hear. So with that, I'll give it back to Danica.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawn. And so this is where I want to start things today. We're going to start with an overview of Columbia Association, because at the end of the day, I really think this is a great way to think about CA. It is where community happens in Columbia. And we're really committed here at this organization to providing as many opportunities to connect with one another, connect with your community, and really reach your full potential as well. So hope you see some of that throughout. So if you aren't already aware, I'm sure many of you are, but CA itself was created by James Rouse, the creator of Columbia, not long after the creation of the community. And about 20 years after that, He said this about the organization, and it's with respect to making it a goal of making Columbia a place that would support the growth and life of people. I think it is our greatest success. Establishing the Columbia Association was a brand new thing. There was nothing like this in America. And frankly, we are still proud to bring a really unique, diverse breadth and depth of services and programs to this community. And I like to believe there's still nothing quite like it in America, and that this still holds true. So another way to look at who CA is who we serve. So as Shawn mentioned, we are a very large community. If we were incorporated, we would be here in Columbia, the second biggest city in the state. So another way of looking at it, though, are the numbers you're seeing up here on your screen. To date, we're looking at about 25,580 residential properties that we serve or have under the Columbia Lien Pain Assessment, which Susan will go a little bit more in depth into. A little more than 1,100 commercial properties, so that's also a significant part of our community. We're proudly serving 17,500 memberships and 4,500 Columbia card holders. And you may not know this, but this is a card that is available to all residents who are not members to have access to a lot of our services as well. And really some astounding numbers about the engagement, the number of people that walk into our doors day in and day out over the latest full fiscal year. So fiscal year 2024, which ran from May 23 to April of last year, we saw more than 2.2 million visits to CA facilities and programs, including more than 1 million in fitness and wellness and more than 1 million in sports and rec. So we'll go over what some of those are. Again, some of you may have different views, experiences, and understandings of what CA is. And really, even folks who live decades here, which I'm sure some of you have, don't understand the full scope of Columbia Association. So hopefully you'll leave here with a little bit of that. One area where we do a lot of our work, and I'm going to go over this as quickly as I can so we can get to questions and things. But one area is what we call community operations here. So you'll see the first buckets or category, if you will, parks, pathways, and play areas. So a lot of people do think of this when they think of Columbia Association. If you walk out on our pathways, 95 plus miles of pathways, you know, an immense amount of tot lots if you have little kids out there. It's a great accessible space to everyone. And this also includes our maintenance of those pathways and bridges and things like that, the infrastructure. You'll see on the other side of the screen, facilities and building grounds, facility services, etc. 10 villages is what Shawn mentioned. That is what our community is made up of, with 10 village associations. And those associations run the programming out of these spaces, but CA still owns the buildings and maintains them, as well as the plazas outside. Again, the villages are really running point on delivering those amazing community services out of those buildings, but we're here to help support the maintenance. Also under community operations is our event services. Many of you may be familiar with what goes on at the lakefront during the summer, but this really extends into the villages and other CA spaces as well. We have an incredible team that supports this. Sustainability is a massive piece of what we do. We are really proud of our leadership in this space. We are recognized by the U.S. Department of Energy for our efforts in energy efficiency. We were part of what was called the Better Climate Challenge, or are part of that, which means we're committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 50% over the next decade or so. So this is something that we really care about and recognize that a lot of folks living in our community care about as well. And if you haven't already checked it out these opportunities, you may have, though, interacted with things like Weed Warriors, Adopt a Spot. We have tree plantings. There's a shot here of us interacting with the community at Greenfest. So certainly, again, something that we care a lot about and invest a lot in. And then community development and real estate services encompasses a lot of different things. But if you really think about the scale and layers of easements and what comes with land ownership, that is really what this department is all about. So they're working with residents on surveying, interacting with the county Department of Zoning. Because we are a master planned community, this takes on a whole new level. And so this team really runs point on that and is very important in making sure that we are maintaining those spaces. And then we move into our other area, the other big part of our organization, which is community programs and services. So a lot of you may be members or use the wellness and fitness facilities. That's over here on the left part of your screen. And, one thing that if you interact with us inside of those three fitness clubs, you may not know about the real push to put more accessible programming outside of those walls. So there have been programs, free fitness classes, dancing under the people tree during the summer, walk with a doc programs, a lot of things that have really tried to reach out to the community beyond the walls of our facilities to make sure that we are providing those services and extending that expertise to everyone here. And then you have sports and recreation. You can see that is an incredibly diverse group there. We have 23 outdoor pools, 23, which is insane. We have a number of indoor pools, tennis facilities, golf, 2 golf courses, skate park and sports park, the ice rink. It is really miraculous and, amazing what kind of hobbies you can discover here at CA and continue to be well. Then we have youth and teen programming. So this includes, it's a pretty large umbrella and includes things like our Youth and Teen Center in Oakland Mills. We have summer camps that still run. And then we have, during the school year, school age services before and after school care, which has been a longstanding program and something that particularly during COVID, I was able to talk with some of the parents involved in that. And it was just, it really showed a light onto how important that program is for families in our community. And then arts and culture here, kind of in the center. We, if you did not know, have we run the Columbia Arts Center, which is an amazing facility out of Longreach. One of the best top ceramics programs, I am told, in the state, if not the region. And there's a number of gallery shows that are free. There's everything from fused glass classes to, again, starting ceramics and beyond. And that facility is actually going through a facelift right now and will be reopening as a renovated space very soon. We're very excited for that. Under that umbrella as well as our multicultural programming. We just, I say just, it feels like she's still brand new. We have a fairly new multicultural program director or manager, I should say, who is bringing some really exciting ideas and making sure that our commitment as a community to being diverse and inclusive continues through experiencing these multicultural programs. So that includes everything from World Language Cafe, which we collaborate with the library on, to things like Latin Dance Night. You'll see that at the bottom photo on your screen. And we just hosted a first ever Afrobeats Bash and Blend event, which was very fun. So more to come on that. Make sure to check back on our events calendar. And then archives. If you did not know, the Columbia, Maryland Archives, A, it exists. It's an amazing resource. And B, it is run under the CA umbrella. So it is really there for anyone and everyone. And I think that's an important point to make because a lot of people associate these kind of research facilities, if you will, or programs as strictly for those people. But anyone is welcome to make an appointment. A lot of Rouse's original papers and things like that are kept and cataloged in the archives. We do have an online version as well. But it's just another great little nook and cranny of our commitment to this community. So what we just saw with pictures, this is another way of looking at it. It is the listed version, if this is the way your brain works, a snapshot of all the moving pieces of CA. And this doesn't, of course, even come close to summarizing the immense amount of programming that happens in these spaces and places. So, but it's a really good place to, list, I should say, to kind of understand the layerings of operations and the breadth and depth of the organization. I would also recommend we have an annual report that comes out every year. It's a good snapshot of not only what CA has invested in and accomplished over the last year, but also a good overview of the kind of nooks and crannies of the organization. And then, of course, nothing happens without some of these more internal facing teams. So we talked about external facing teams. So this is just a list of some of our internal teams that, really keep everything moving and it is really pivotal to making sure that we function on a high level each and every day. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Susan. She's going to have a very high level overview of our financials.
Well, thank you, Dannika, and welcome everyone, and thank you for participating tonight, taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us. And I like that. I think my favorite slide is the one before that shows the administrative functions, because I say, nothing happens here without sort of those backbone operations. At the same time, we wouldn't be here without our customer facing and outward facing friends. So you all know a lot about Columbia Association, but I think the point of my participation is to give you a sense of the scope of the organization. So if you choose to participate, to run for a CA board seat, for example, you might know a little bit more about what you're getting yourself into. The organization is large and complex, and I'm going to just hit the highlights of that for you this evening. So most of you, I think, or if not all of you, know that the more than half, just over half of the annual revenue for CA is generated by the annual charge. It's a formula with two components. There's a cap, a valuation, and a rate. I'm going to just do this a little bit out of order. The rate is 68 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, and there's a lot of kind of formula language there, but that's about almost 10% less than what the maximum allowable rate is of 75 cents. And that rate and the way the annual charge is calculated is in the deed and declaration, the founding documents for Columbia Association. The cap is limits the amount by which a property valuation can increase in 1 year. So that cap has been 3.5% since fiscal year 2017. The legislated maximum is 10%. So you can see we're at 35% of the max there. The county has a similar cap for the homestead cap, and theirs is 5%. And they've kept it at 5% for a long time. So it's also important to understand that the annual charge applies identically to commercial properties as it does to residential properties, and that's unusual for planned communities. And for FY26, which is the fiscal year that will start May 1, 2025, the draft budget that the CA board is going to vote on next week includes that same rate and cap. So on the next slide, we're just this is just a big old pie chart of what the revenue looks like for FY25. So the year we're in ends April 30. We project as the year goes on what we think the revenue is going to be. This projection was done around October. So you can see the commercial annual charge in the lavender, it's a little over $18 million. It's 21% of the total. So those 1,130 properties that Dannika mentioned earlier contribute over $18 million to CA's annual budget. Residential annual charge, 32 million, a little over 32 million at the bottom. Those almost 26,000 properties contribute that $32 million. And then community programs and services on the left, these are the membership, school age services, art center classes, court time, green fees, etc. They're at over 34 million. So that's more now than the residential annual charge. And these proportions are now very similar to pre-COVID. The dollars are not identical, but the proportions are now similar to where we were before the COVID pandemic and that economic impact. So you can see that those community programs and services income is really important. And when we did not have that during the COVID years, it just meant we couldn't offer the programs and the services and the amenities that make Columbia special and that the communities come to really value. Next one. So another picture give you, lots of people want to know how the annual charge is used and what is it subsidizing? People ask a lot. So on the left is the income, the annual charge, and we also put together the investment earnings or the interest income that we've received or we project to have in FY26 and fiscal year 26, and then all of the uses for it on the right. And this is a cash presentation, so this is more like your own budget, your own personal budget than we would do for our audited financials, for example. But hopefully you can relate to this a little bit. So on the right, it's showing, how the annual charge supports CA's programs, the programs and the services that the community uses, as well as operational needs or priorities. So that capital reinvestment, for example, of $14.5 million, that those are the dollars that are budgeted to repair and replace the pathways and expand the system and replace bridges and dredge lakes and modernize our technology and improve and renovate the village community, the buildings that the village community associations occupy, and the wellness and fitness and pools and all that. Community operations, their open space and sustainability bucket or division uses the most annual charge, and that kind of makes sense. They're not generating other revenue. And then we have CA has debt and we're repaying that on schedule, and that's a $5.5 million. But I wanted to also say that the previous boards, right out of COVID, recognized the need for CA to be stronger financially and to have some cash reserves. And this shows that we would anticipate that adding $3 million to those emergency reserves in FY26. And with that, I think that's it. I hand it over back to you, Dannika.
Thank you so much, Susan. Another reminder, we got one question that I will type an answer to. It's a little more suited for a typed answer, but just a reminder, you can throw in your questions now and we'll get to them at the end, or if something sparks later, that's perfectly fine. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew to use that Q&A function. So with that, I will pass it over to Bill.
Hey, okay, hi, thanks, and good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Santos. I am the chair of the CA Board of Directors. I live in the village of Wild Lake, and I've been on the CA board for 3 years now. This is my third year, almost finished with the third year. Thank you, Dannika. A few things I wanted to talk about. The first is the duty of care. These are the roles and responsibilities for all corporations in the nonprofit sector, and they all 100% apply to the Columbia Association. Duty of care, as it says here, should fulfill the roles to the best of their abilities. What this means in layman's terms is you got to do a couple of things. You have to be prepared when you have a CA board meeting. Read the background material, talk to folks in your community, talk to folks in other communities that may be affected, associated with the topics we may be discussing. You want to show up for our meetings ready to go and ready to engage your fellow board members in discussion, and then ultimately votes on items that need to be voted on. Secondly, you need to, as part of your care, actually show up at board meetings. This is typically rolled in for all nonprofits. The Columbia Association Board of Directors typically doesn't have a problem with this. If you have to actually run in an election and get a petition signed by your neighbors to be on this board, you typically have enough motivation to show up for the meetings after the election. So we'll just move on from there. And the last thing is ask questions. This not only applies to during board meetings, we like to see a full engagement of our entire board during our board meetings, but before and after, if there's any question, if you're not certain of what the effect of a policy may be or what the actual policy looks like, it's important to engage other board members, staff, to ensure that you are fully aware and engaged with the goings on in CA. Second is the duty of loyalty. This generally, the first part of this is No self-dealing. All activities should be done in the best interest of the organization, not in the interest of the individual. So if you had a giant office paper company that you worked for, you would not want to be steering your deal, the deal for Columbia towards your giant office paper company to get you a promotion or a raise. You want to be able to evaluate all activities associated with the Columbia Association. That's kind of a glib example, but you want to make sure that when you are doing your research, asking questions during board meetings, and voting on policies and other initiatives, you want to make sure that you have the interest of the organization in your questions and your votes, and not personal preferences put ahead of the organization. Secondly, as a member of the corporation, your loyalty is to the corporation. The best I can describe, I once sat in a seminar on nonprofits, and the lady leading the seminar said, at one time I was a patient at a hospital and received services as a patient. And then later in life, I became a board member for that hospital. And I found that my responsibilities and my loyalties to the hospital as a board member were far different than my approach to the hospital as a patient. And similarly with the Columbia Association, we all live in Columbia. We engage Columbia on many levels, whether it be as a member in one of our membership programs, or just enjoying the lakefront concerts, or the open space. As a board member, it's important to make sure that you are cognizant and aware that your duty is to the organization. I hope that's not too nebulous, but that's important to know. And lastly is the duty of obedience. Obedience really speaks to our ethics policies and our board operation policies. We do have a standard board book on how we all agree to conduct our meetings. And it's important to review that material once elected, so that when we hit the ground running and we start getting into the board meetings, we understand how the board meetings are conducted. And then equally important, we have to understand our responsibility as far as ethical conduct and being above board and representing the company in a positive way. We can move on to the next slide. Here we want to talk about three primary roles of the Columbia Association Board of Directors. First is to participate and engage and ultimately approve the Columbia Association budget every year. That's at least our current policy. At one point, we did have budgets every other year. We had 2-year budgets, let me say it correctly. Currently, we're doing annual budgets. And the budget cycle starts early in your tenure as a board member. We typically sit down and discuss budget strategig priorities at the end of the summer. That'll only be 2 or 3 meetings into your tenure. So it's important to understand where we are as far as the budget is concerned, and what priorities we want to discuss and provide to staff as we move forward. From our strategic priorities meeting, that budget then gets crafted by staff, and during the fall months and the autumn, there's a back and forth between staff and the board as far as refining the budget, and we'll get a final draft budget in January. We received that not too long ago, and as was mentioned, the final budget will be voted on at our next meeting on the 27th, I believe, of this month. So if you guys can come out, it's an exciting time. Really, it's like a Final Four. No, I'm just kidding. It's passing a budget. It's not that exciting, but it's an important document, and we do spend a lot of time on it. So please understand that as part of your role as a CA board member. Second is that the CA board also reviews the performance of the CA president on an annual basis. As laid out in our charter, the employee that the CA board has direct influence and interaction with is the president of the corporation. And is the only person in the corporation that the board has direct review authority on. And that is just part of what we do. So that's an important thing to understand and keep in mind. And then the third thing is that as a CA board member, in between the budgets and the performance reviews and all the other things that we do, we need to keep an eye on the future and be forward looking in our policies, in our capital budgets, in our planning. We just recently passed a strategic plan for the Columbia Association. That happened a month ago. But we also have many other master plans. There is a pedestrian and bicycle master plan, an open space master plan, aquatics master plan, and all of these documents are foundational on guiding how CA will implement those aspects of the corporation towards the future. So engaging and understanding those documents and processes are the third leg of your primary responsibilities as a board member. Next slide, please. And if you get on the CA board, they take your picture. Just wanted to give you a heads up on that. You will have to sit and get your picture taken. It's mostly harmless, but we just wanted to provide this slide to give you an idea of the people that are on the board. We have over time seen many different people from many different walks of life, folks who have been retired, folks who are just starting out. We do have quite a lot of things going on there. So that's about all I had from the CA board view. I am going to turn this over as quickly as I can because I'm getting a little tired talking. So thank you all.
No worries, no worries. And Bill, I welcome you to chime in on either of this, but just in terms of commitments, the way it works right now is that the CA board is meeting once a month, the fourth Thursday of every month. And that becomes the second Thursday in November and December to make way for the holidays. No meetings in August, unless the board feels strongly that there's something on the agendas that they need to accomplish. And there are select months where there are 2 meetings, like February, to finalize the budget.
Just a quick follow-up on that, if I can, a quick
Please.
adder. I will say that this year, as a CA board member, most of our meetings have started at 7 o'clock. And then we have typically ended in between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. So it's about a 2-hour lift for most of our meetings. There are 1 or 2 where we've had a lot of residents who wanted to talk to us, which is always great, but it adds a little time. Or we've had a very heavy agenda where we ran a little bit past 10. But typically these monthly meetings, mostly monthly meetings, run about 2 hours, 2.5 hours at most. So just to give you guys an idea of the time commitment, I think that's important.
Very. Yeah, thank you, Bill. That's a great point. And it's worth noting as well that this is a scale back from even last year when we had this presentation, in terms of the frequency of meetings. So that may be good news to a lot of you looking to get involved for the first time. And then the CA board reps are typically also serving as a liaison on their respective village boards, again, which we'll hear about from Laura in a second here. And those meet once or twice a month, depending on the village. And then, of course, board members may have additional meetings occasionally closed under the Maryland HOA Act for reasons like personnel, consultations with an attorney, legal consultations, and discussion of a contract. And then, and maybe Bill, you have some elaboration on this, but board members are also expected to serve on committees. There are various committees that function under the board of directors.
Yeah, just really quick on the closed meetings. These are typically closed for perfectly reasonable reasons. If we're talking about legal matters or negotiations, things that typically are not deliberated in public, there is certainly a well-articulated exception in the Maryland Homeowners Association Act for those, and those are really the only reasons why meetings are closed. All other meetings are advertised and held in open forum. And in addition, we also, as CA board members, this is an important point as we're talking about being a CA board member. The Columbia Association does not hold elections. The elections that are going to happen at the end of April are in fact village elections. The 10 villages hold those elections. And when you are elected from a village, you are not elected as a CA board member. You are elected as a Columbia Council representative. through a somewhat complicated system. That is how everybody gets to the CA board. Each Columbia Council representative shows up at the beginning of May and then is then appointed to the CA board. So in your capacity as a Columbia Council representative, per your village documents, you're required to attend the village board meetings. And then also at the CA level, we have 3 committees: board operations, audit, and risk management. Currently, those are what we call our standing committees. And those need to be populated by a majority of CA board members. During some board years, there are ad hoc committees that are put together to study specific tasks or areas of interest to report back to the CA board, but they are not done on a regular basis. They're done on a need basis. So, all right, Dannika, I think I went way too far on that one.
Nope, all the information is good. And again, keep those questions coming if you want any clarification. We're now going to hand it over to Laura to talk a little bit more about the village boards.
Hello, everybody. I'm Laura. I'm the Hickory Ridge Village Manager, and there are 9 other people who serve in this role for the other 9 villages. And glad to be here speaking with you tonight. At the village level, the village board, like Bill referred to at the Columbia Association level, the village board is, we village managers serve at the will of the board, and they hire the village managers. And then the village managers manage the staff and such. As a village board, it is your responsibility to enforce covenants. The village boards can advocate for residents, either with CA for budget requests, with the county for things to be, repaired, replaced, new things. They also advocate in other situations, for the village residents. We host village events, so it's one of your missions as a village board is community building, to help get the community involved, to get, to know your neighbors, just be out there, come to our events so you can talk to people about your role and things like that. We partner with other villages for Columbia-wide special events like Columbia Cleans and things like that. We offer programming at our villages, classes and lectures. We manage the community and neighborhood centers. So we rent out our neighborhood centers to HOAs in your village that need meeting space. We rent them out for family gatherings and life moments like retirements and weddings and things like that. We're there for the community and we provide a place for the community to gather. And then the board also communicates with residents. As I said, you're one of the point people to help residents with issues that they have, help direct them in the right location, where they need to go, who they need to talk to, that kind of thing. And, the village board, it's a great opportunity to learn about how Columbia works, how the community as a whole works, and just learn more about the village. So Bill kind of touched on this already. Each village holds its own election. We also have our own articles of incorporation that dictate the number of board members allowed on boards. So some villages have boards of 5, some villages have boards of 10. It varies from village to village, and each village has its own rules. Also, the terms for each village are different. Some villages have 1-year terms, some villages have 2-year terms. It's all very individualized. And then we also all elect 1 representative to the county council or Columbia Council, as Bill was talking about. And some of those have 1-year terms. Some of those have 2-year terms. It varies from village to village. So you would want to check out with your own village manager what the exact parameters of the role are for your village. And each village is different in how we determine voter eligibility. In Hickory Ridge, we have 1 vote per household. So no matter how many people live in a household, each household gets 1 vote unless the household is rented, and then the tenant gets a vote and the owner gets a vote. Other villages allow everyone in the village older than 18 to vote, as long as you're a resident. So if a household had 5 adults living in it, then 5 people would get to vote in that household. Each village is different, and you would find information about your village elections on your ballots and in your newsletters and all that kind of village information. All right, so here we are. We're kind of in mid-February. My candidate packet is available in Hickory Ridge. Some of the other village candidate packets aren't available until early March, but each individual village works on its own timeline. So whether you're interested in running for the Columbia Council or if you're interested in running for a village board, you do have to fulfill some candidate requirements, and each of these are different for each village. Generally, in early to mid-March, the candidate packets are due to the village office, and the deadlines can be found on the candidate information for each village. And then in mid-March to mid-April, some of the villages host a candidate night where the candidates come and the residents who are in the village can ask questions. There might be pre-selected questions, those kind of things. Just it's an opportunity for candidates to reach out to the residents and let them know what they stand for and what they're interested in. And then our election day this year is Saturday, April 26th. All the villages will have in-person elections on that day, and the time of the elections vary. Some villages do it in the morning, some villages do it all day. It's different. And also every village has absentee ballot options, and some villages also offer online voting. So depending upon your village, NCA has a really great web page on their website where you can go to and learn which village you're in, how to connect with your village information. So Danica, you might want to share that in the chat. I do love that resource. Yeah, and then once you're elected on that Saturday, usually most villages know by the end of the day or by Sunday who the people who have been elected are. Then, I guess the first CA board meeting is on May 8th, and the first village board meetings vary from village to village. So that's when you would begin your term. And then board orientation for CA is Saturday, May 17th. Each of individual village does their orientations in different ways.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. And you, like Bill and you, were on similar wavelengths. We will be talking about the Columbia Votes website here in a second. But
Awesome.
really quickly, Laura alluded to this, but each village does have their own elections cycle in terms of whether it's annual or biannual. And so every village this year will elect village board members. Again, as Laura mentioned, it varies village to village in terms of how many seats are up for election, but each village will have some sort of election process, or at least an application or nomination process. If it's uncontested, then they may or may not have, again, depending on the village, may or may not have an election. So this year, 7 villages elect their CA reps every 2 years, and 3 villages elect CA representatives every year. So again, the best way to really keep track of this, as much as I appreciate the praise for the website that we have, is really to reach out to your village to make sure you have the full picture and super accurate information. They are the most well-versed on their individual village election. So the villages electing CA board representatives in 2025, because that is the differentiator, are the ones circled and listed here. So Dorsey's Search, Hickory Ridge, King's Contrivance, Longreach, Oakland Mills, River Hill, and Wild Lake. So those are the ones electing CA representatives, which means if you are interested in running for the CA board of directors, if you live in one of those villages, then you certainly can explore that option this year. And this is what Laura was talking about. So a few years back, after actually a good amount of feedback as well from the villages in trying to have a centralized location for information, the CA team put together Columbia Votes, which is a web page that not only provides as much overview information as possible, but also has a breakdown of information village by village and a tool that you can use to look up what village you live in. Again, I would highly recommend, if you use that tool, while it is really, really great, to double check with your village that pops up. There's always technical issues, and the last thing we need is someone feeling like they were not heard on election day because that spit out something incorrect or inaccurate. While we're pretty confident most of the information in there is pretty solid, again, we highly recommend, if you do use that tool, to check in with your village. So This is just, again, a really great tool. It has some overview information as well as village by village breakdowns. You can also sign up for email reminders on this page, or this series of pages, I should say. So really, we like to end with just kind of a snapshot of our community. This is an overview really in picture form of who we serve each and every day, and we're so proud and honored to do that. We really welcome that and welcome you to join the service that we all get to participate in. Really as a privilege. And again, thank you so much for spending the time to learn more about it today. We do have a couple of questions, even though it is a little off topic. Of course, Laura being here, I will allow it. Somebody was wondering about employment opportunities, whether there were employment opportunities at the village centers.
So the villages do employ people, but each village has different needs. I currently don't have any open slots at my village, but it wouldn't hurt to check with the other villages and see if they have availability. They're mostly part-time employment.
Thank you. And then we had one, and please, we'll keep the lines open for a little bit here. But taking on a little bit more of the financial, Susan, somebody was wondering, what is the source of debt that was on that one graphic that we showed?
Yeah, so for many years, especially at the beginning of CA's existence, the organization borrowed money to have in place some of the amenities, like especially the pools and the pathways and parks and the ice rink at the beginning and swim center, et cetera, before the population and the development was robust enough to pay for those things. So we called that pre-servicing. The organization had issued a lot of debt in different forms. I'm actually issued and paid back $130 million worth of debt, more over its history. So what we have now, we continue to occasionally use debt to fund capital improvements that are just beyond what CA's cash flow ability is to pay for. So we have remaining about $17 million in outstanding debt that was two bank loans that were issued, one in 2014 and one in 2020. So we have scheduled principal payments. We make those every month.
Thank you, Susan. And if there's any follow-up on that, please let us know. But Bill, this might be a good one for you. Are there any benefits that board members enjoy for their time? Because it is a volunteer position and it's a lot of time.
Wow. Let's see. There's a couple of things I would say. As part of the being on the Columbia Association Board of Directors, each board member is offered a single membership to the Columbia Association, the CA Fit and Play membership, I believe. And there is a small stipend that if you accept it, you do get. But that's pretty much the extent of it. The other benefits that you get is you get to, on a monthly basis, engage in the topics of the day with all of your fellow board members. There are very few groupies. There's not much there. And really, what actually you would ask, why would I run for this position 3 years in a row, and why would I come back? What benefit do you get from that? And I would say, you really get a chance to be, at the table and also in the individual villages. If people have concerns, helping them with constituent service to resolve those concerns, and to see, things get improved. If there's a tot lot or playground that needs some TLC to help find a way to get that accomplished, or going to some of the concerts like Lake Fest or the Juneteenth festival that we put on at the lakefront. It's really great to be there, and it feels really special to be part of the organization that's putting it on. So I'd say those are also intangibles, but nonetheless benefits that you get from being on the CA board.
Thank you, Bill. Very well put. Very well put. We did have one question, and Laura, thank you for answering it, but someone was asking about being required to reside in one of the villages to run. I think it's a great question. Laura mentioned, just typed in her answer that you do have to live on CA assessed property in the village. So if you are interested in running, just again, the best piece of advice I think we can give is to double check with your respective village or the village you think you live in. And then, you know, we can always, somebody will send you in the right direction to make sure that you can be involved. I will add too that if for some reason this doesn't suit you or you are not able to run this time around, there are a number of ways to engage with the community through this organization. And I can drop that that URL in the chat as well. We have a great page that kind of lists out all the different ways you can engage with Columbia Association. So, Everine, I believe, and I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing that beautiful name. Do most board members serve more than one term? Bill, do you want to take this? And Susan, you may have some kind of historical knowledge as well.
If you don't mind, I'll go first. I think the short answer on that is yes. And there are a couple of different reasons for that. Now, I'll try and be short. I know that we've been at this almost in an hour. First, I am in Wild Lake. That is one of the villages that has a 1-year term. And it is really difficult to run for a position on the CA board, get a chance to serve for a full year, and to see while you're learning the organization, to be able to provide an impact in a single year is hard to do. So I did run for a second and a third time, and I don't intend to stay forever. We have had a few members that were long tenured, but there is, I would say, a reasonable amount of turnover year to year, based on terms and the villages that are up for election each year.
Susan, anything to add, just out of curiosity?
No, the only thing I would add, and just emphasize, I guess, is that, I see there's a question about employees that CA hires, and it's kind of a nice segue into that, Bill alluded to the learning curve, that this is a large organization. It is complex. It's often surprises board members by the level of complexity and the things that they need to learn and understand. It's also a very seasonal organization. So if you haven't been here for a year, either as an employee or a board member, you haven't had the opportunity to even see everything. So staying longer than a year is really helpful to the organization, for board members and employees. And I can just jump into that if that's good. So we year round, we have about 850 employees. Most of them are part-time, and there's about 240 full-time employees. In the summer, we're in the process right now of hiring about 500 lifeguards and other, outdoor pool employees. And so those positions are really, those folks will come on board in mid-April, maybe May, because we pay for their training, and we hope and offer incentives to have them stay through the whole outdoor pool season, and then stay on with us to work indoors. So it's just full-time positions. There's some salaried, some hourly, and then a lot of part-time. We really value and rely on a large part-time workforce.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kate, I was just trying to get that slide back up. I apologize. I had managed to X out of it when we started Q&A, but I think I have it now. Kate was asking which villages do not have returning CA council members. I'm going to share my screen one more time here. Let's see.
Dannika, I'm just going to jump in and say the villages that are listed just don't, their villages have 2-year terms, and their representatives who are not listed were elected in the last election season. So because it's a 2-year term, there's just not an election being held for those folks. So they stay on the board. They just don't have to be reelected because their term is for 2 years.
Precisely. Thank you so much for clear, because you're right. That could have gone a lot of different ways. I'm not exactly sure.
And then one more comment. We don't know which people who are currently on the CA board will be running for reelection until
Exactly.
they submit their candidate statements, and that's announced by the villages. So Bill could be running this year, or he may not be running this year. We don't know.
Yeah, Laura, thanks for clarifying. That's perfect. Bill, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I'll cut the tension. I intend to run. I'll get a petition here. So
I wasn't trying
thanks
to
for
put
putting
you
me
on
on
the
the
I know. I
spot.
was
spot.
gonna say. I think everybody was, on pins and needles there, Bill. But
And it's the villages themselves. It's Owen Brown Town Center and Harper's Choice that the CA board member is going to fulfill their second year for this cycle.
yes,
So hopefully that's straight. Yeah, if I think it was Kate that asked. You may want to ask the current representative in your village if they intend to run. It's a perfectly reasonable question. I clearly was asked that 5 minutes ago. So, and that'll tell you what's going on. So.
thank you to Laura and Bill for answering that much more eloquently than what I was trying to get out there. Super helpful. And yeah, I think the moral of the story there is, if you are interested and you do qualify, if you are within the qualifications for running and you are interested, go ahead and get the application in, and then you'll find out what the election kind of, or the race looks like from there. So that's how it works. All right, I am not seeing any other questions, and we are just about at that hour mark. I'm going to say a slow goodbye just in case anybody has a burning question, but I will be sure before we sign off here to put in right now. Communications at columbiaassociation.org is where you can reach us with additional questions. As Shawn said, his door is always open, which means also his inbox. So make sure if you have additional questions that pop in your head later, please don't hesitate. And again, not to push it off to the villages, but these are village elections, and they are going to be your best resource in these situations for detailed information around running and or voting. So please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to your individual villages as well. Again, this session will be posted on CA's YouTube channel, and I am going to do my best to get everyone who registered for this session that link before the end of tomorrow. Please don't hold me to that. If it comes on Monday, please know it's coming. But want to make sure that anybody who wasn't available tonight, something might have come up, that we get that to everybody. And perhaps you now thought of someone during this hour that would be a great fit for this, and you want them to understand a little bit more, which is great. Shawn, I see you unmuted, so I assume you would love to give some parting thoughts and notes here as we wrap up.
I did. I just wanted to thank everyone for participating, and thank you, Dannika, for doing such a great job moderating. And thanks to Bill, Laura, and Susan for taking the time to talk about, the opportunities and the fun of being participating in the CA.
100%. Awesome. Well, we hope this has been informative and helpful to help you consider your candidacy. And we hope to, at the very least, see you out for the elections, election day or online voting, however you vote. Get it in. That is really your voice here locally. So with that, I will say one more thank you, and have a great evening. Thank you to our presenters, and we look forward to seeing all of you soon.
Thanks.